583 people died in 8 seconds. March 27, 1977. Los Rodeos Airport, Tenerife. Two Boeing 747s collided on a fog-covered runway. The deadliest aviation disaster in history. No hijackers. No engine failure. No freak weather event. Just one man who refused to listen. Captain Jacob Veldhuyzen van Zanten sat in the cockpit of KLM Flight 4805. His co-pilot, Klaus Mers, voiced a concern. Van Zanten ignored him. He pushed the throttles forward. The aircraft accelerated down the runway. Through thick fog. Zero visibility. He could not see what was ahead. But he knew. Pan Am Flight 1736 was somewhere on that same runway. Still taxiing. Still trying to find the exit. Van Zanten knew this. His co-pilot reminded him. The flight engineer questioned the clearance. Van Zanten did not stop. 8 seconds later, metal met metal at over 160 miles per hour. The KLM 747 ripped through the Pan Am fuselage. Fire consumed both aircraft instantly. Only 61 people survived from the Pan Am flight. Everyone on the KLM flight died, including Van Zanten himself. Nothing about that day was supposed to go wrong. Both flights were routine. Pan Am Flight 1736 departed Los Angeles. Destination, Las Palmas, Canary Islands. KLM Flight 4805 left Amsterdam. Same destination. Both carried hundreds of passengers. Families. Tourists. Business travelers. Then a bomb exploded at Las Palmas Airport. A terrorist attack by Canary Islands separatists. Authorities diverted all flights. Los Rodeos Airport on Tenerife became the backup. A small airport. Not built for wide-body jets. The runway could barely handle 747. Now it had to manage multiple diversions. Pan Am and KLM both landed safely. Passengers waited on board. Hours passed. Las Palmas reopened. Time to leave. But fog rolled in. Thick, impenetrable fog. Visibility dropped below 300 meters. Captain Van Zanten grew impatient. He was KLM's chief flight instructor. The face of the airline. His image appeared in their advertisements. He trained other pilots. He wrote the manual. He had a spotless record. But he was running out of duty hours. Dutch law strictly regulated flight crew hours. If he exceeded his limit, the entire crew would be stranded overnight. Expensive. Embarrassing. Unacceptable for a man of his reputation. He decided to refuel at Tenerife instead of Las Palmas. Save time. Get home. The refueling took 35 minutes. Meanwhile, Pan Am taxied onto the single runway. Air traffic control instructed them to exit at the third taxiway. But the fog was too thick. The crew missed the exit. They continued down the runway, searching for the next one. Van Zanten finished refueling. He radioed the tower. Ready for takeoff. Air traffic control did not clear him. They instructed him to taxi to the runway and wait. The Pan Am flight was still on the runway ahead. Van Zanten acknowledged. He taxied into position. The fog swallowed everything. He could not see beyond 300 meters. The tower could not see either aircraft. No ground radar existed at Los Rodeos. Controllers relied entirely on radio communication and pilot reports. Van Zanten sat at the runway threshold. Minutes ticked by. His duty hours dwindled. The fog showed no sign of lifting. He made a decision. He pushed the throttles forward. The KLM 747 began rolling. His co-pilot, Klaus Mers, immediately spoke up. Wait a minute. We do not have ATC clearance. Van Zanten did not stop. He muttered something unclear. The cockpit voice recorder captured the exchange. Mers radioed the tower. KLM 4805, we are now at takeoff. The phrasing was ambiguous. Not standard terminology. Controllers heard the transmission. They responded with route clearance. Not takeoff clearance. A critical difference. Route clearance tells you where to go after takeoff. Takeoff clearance gives permission to actually take off. Van Zanten heard route clearance. He interpreted it as permission. Or perhaps he chose to interpret it that way. The flight engineer, Willem Schroeder, spoke up. Is he not clear, that Pan Am? Meaning, is the Pan Am plane clear of the runway? Mers responded. Oh, yes. But his voice carried uncertainty. No one challenged Van Zanten directly. The engines roared. The aircraft accelerated. Then the tower transmitted. KLM, stand by for takeoff. We will call you. Van Zanten did not hear it. The Pan Am crew was transmitting at the same time. Radio interference. A phenomenon called blocking. The message never reached the KLM cockpit. But something else happened. Something nobody noticed until investigators reviewed the tapes. The tower transmission ended with Pan Am crew saying, "We are still taxiing down the runway." KLM heard that. The cockpit voice recorder captured it. A muffled voice in the background. Schroeder tensed. Mers glanced at Van Zanten. Van Zanten did not react. He kept the throttles at full power. The 747 hurtled down the runway at 150 knots. Then 160. Approaching rotation speed. Pan Am Captain Victor Grubbs saw lights. Emerging from the fog. Moving fast. Directly at them. He screamed into the radio. "We are still on the runway." His first officer, Robert Bragg, shouted the same. Grubbs slammed the throttles forward. Trying to get off the runway. Turn onto the grass. Anything. Too late. Van Zanten saw the Pan Am jet. A shadow in the fog. 700 meters ahead. He had 3 seconds. Not enough distance to stop. Not enough speed to clear them. He pulled back on the yoke. Trying to lift off early. The nose lifted. The tail struck the runway. Sparks flew. The aircraft clawed into the air. For a moment, it looked possible. Then the landing gear hit. The KLM 747 slammed into the Pan Am fuselage at 140 knots. The top of the Pan Am aircraft ripped open. Seats. Luggage. Bodies ejected into the air. The KLM plane's landing gear sheared off. Fuel tanks ruptured. Fire erupted instantly. The KLM 747 flew another 150 meters. Then crashed onto the runway. Exploded. Everyone aboard died instantly. The Pan Am plane sat in flames. The left side of the fuselage was destroyed. But the right side doors were intact. Passengers and crew scrambled to escape. 61 people made it out. Including Captain Grubbs and his flight crew. 583 people died. The worst aviation disaster in history. No survivors from KLM Flight 4805. Van Zanten killed himself. His crew. His passengers. And 335 people on the Pan Am flight. Because he started takeoff without clearance. Because he ignored his co-pilot. Because he thought he knew better. Investigators recovered the cockpit voice recorder. They analyzed every word. The timeline became clear. Mers questioned the clearance. Schroeder questioned whether Pan Am was clear. Van Zanten dismissed both concerns. The tower told him to stand by. He never heard it. Or he chose not to wait. Why did he do it? The investigation revealed something chilling. Van Zanten was under immense pressure. His duty hours. His reputation. His role as chief instructor. He had never made a mistake. He was the best. The airline depended on him. Passengers trusted him. He trained others to perfection. He could not be wrong. Psychologists call it authority gradient. Subordinates hesitate to challenge superiors. Even when lives are at stake. Mers and Schroeder both sensed danger. Neither stopped him. They questioned. They hinted. They expressed concern. But they did not say stop. And Van Zanten did not listen. Tenerife changed aviation forever. Airlines rewrote communication protocols. Standard phraseology became mandatory. At takeoff became now at takeoff. Takeoff and cleared became the only approved terms. Crew resource management training started. Co-pilots learned to challenge captains. Captains learned to listen. Authority gradient training became required worldwide. Air traffic control procedures were overhauled. Ground radar became standard at major airports. Cockpit voice recorders were analyzed differently. Not just for mechanical failure, but for human decision-making. The deadliest crash in history had zero mechanical failure. Both aircraft were perfect. Weather was bad but manageable. The only failure was human. One man who thought his experience made him infallible. One man who ignored 2 warnings from his own crew. One man who could not admit he might be wrong. 583 people paid the price. The Tenerife disaster remains the benchmark. Every pilot studies it. Every airline references it. Every safety protocol traces back to that foggy runway. Van Zanten's name is now synonymous with preventable disaster. His face was on KLM advertisements. Now it is in textbooks. A warning. This case file stays open because the question remains, how many disasters start not with bad luck, but with someone convinced they are too experienced to be questioned? Subscribe for a new dark truth every day.